Thank you. Well, I didn't mean to look rumpled already, but evidently that's what happened. Let me see. There we are. Wait, I know why. The tuner was out. From early in the morning, when the stars all shine, I have got a song in this head of mine. Sometimes I sing it softly, sometimes right out loud, sometimes when I'm all alone, sometimes in a crowd. I like to sing. I open up my mouth, the song comes out, I raise my voice, I make the joyful noise, sing. Okay, now I got a part for you that you can sing on this. This place is gonna sound good. This part is so simple to sing, because I know some of you are nervous. This part is so simple to sing that even an adult can sing it. Now I know that sounds funny, but here's what I have noticed. It's just like you were saying. If you ask a bunch of kids in a room, who here can sing, they all raise their hands, right? And it's like big duh, I can do that, right? Yeah, we can do that. If you ask a bunch of adults in a room, a bunch of 40-year-olds who here can sing, half of them go, no, I can't do that. I didn't ask if they could sing well, I didn't ask if they could sing in tune, I just asked if they could sing. So I noticed that, because people say, no, I don't sing. Although you do see them. You see them sing, even the ones that don't. You see them. You don't hear them. You're driving on the highway and you look over and there's a guy in the car going with the windows, ah, baby! But not like that. But they don't sing. But I figured out why they don't sing. It's too hard for them. And here's the reason that it's too hard for them. Some of you, the children here, you don't know this, I'm going to explain it to you. It's hard for them because of you. See, because some of you don't know this, what a parent's job is. And I'm going to tell you so you can remember this. A parent's job, see, every day what happens is the parent of the child takes a little bit of their brain and gives it to the child. See, every day, here's a little bit more of my brain. Every day, and the child takes the brain and puts it in their head. And every day they get a little bit smarter. So that by the time they are 16 years old, the child has a full brain. And their parents have lost their minds. And if you don't think that's true, just ask the 16-year-old, are your parents out of their minds? And they will say, yes, they are. So I thought, maybe the song, maybe it's just too hard for them. Like words are just difficult. Because you'll see parents do that. You'll come in and you'll do something and the parent will go like this. And you'll wait for them, but they don't know what to say. So I thought, what if we had a part to sing that wasn't even words? Just an uttering that they could say, and then everybody could sing together, and I think I found it. So here's what happens. On the chorus, I sing, I like to sing, and you sing, la, 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 la. That's it. That's all I'm looking for, nothing more than that. It's not even words, and I don't really care, it's in tune. Okay, that's all I'm looking for, so let's try that. You guys ready? Here we go. I like to sing. Okay, that was exceptional. Okay, let's just try the second step in singing recovery. I mean, we'll add a little rhythm. We're gonna make it a work song. So at the end of the la 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 la, say huh! Okay, out there, right? Okay. I like to sing la 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 la. Okay, I know some of you are excited. It's a little farther back there on the beat. Okay. Okay. I like to sing la 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 la. Huh. All right. I like to sing la 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 la. It's probably the first time this church has ever heard that. Open up my mouth. The song comes out. I raise my voice. Yeah, you were supposed to sing there. I saw some of you wanted to, but you thought, what if I'm not supposed to sing? But there's no time today that you are not supposed to sing unless I'm telling a story. Sing, I raise my voice, la, 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 la. Make a joyful noise and sing. Okay, here we go. When I was a baby on my mama's knee, everybody worried what was wrong with me, 'cause I would scream my head off, do it all day long, but I was only practicing my little baby song. I like to sing la 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 la. Open up my mouth, the song comes out, I raise my voice, la 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 la. Make a joyful noise and sing. Well, I got some vocal cords, I've got a pair of lungs, I've got a great big mouth, that's where I keep my tongue. They all work together when I tell them to, 'cause there's nothing I like better than to sing this song for you. I like to sing la 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 la. Open up my mouth, the song comes out, I raise my voice. Make a joyful noise and sing. Okay, that's good so far. Now we got one more verse and chorus. So I think it's time for some testing. Yeah. The kids are like, no! Not again! Not more testing! It's like they're testing the kindergartners, for Pete's sake. No, I don't mean testing for the kids. I think there's enough of that, don't you? Don't you think we kind of need some testing for the grown-ups? Yeah, okay, so here's what we're gonna do. On the first la la la's, children, please, for once in your lives, be quiet. Just try to keep your mouth shut. And we'll see how the adults do on the la 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 la's, okay? So don't sing, just stop and listen, okay? And if you're sitting next to somebody and they're grown up and they're not singing, give them a little push, okay? So, oh yeah, he's going, oh, let me sit next to Dad, I've changed my mind. Okay, but if they're singing, oh look, see, they're switching. This is my chance to get even. If he's singing, don't hit him. Okay, it might be the first time in months. If he is, okay. And just remember, he is the dad, and I'm one too. They're around for a long time. Okay, and then on the second la la la's, adults, please be quiet for once in your lives. And the kids will show you how it's done, okay? And then we'll do it all together. Ready? Well, every creature's got a song, listen you will hear. Whales out on the ocean, mosquitoes in your ear, coyotes in the canyon, dolphins in the sea, hootin', howlin', buzzin', growlin', one big symphony. Okay, adults, children, sip it. Adults, here we go. They like to sing. It was horrible? How was it? It's horrible? Retest? Take the test again, we're sorry. Okay, what? What? Retest, yes. The children are in charge of tests. Okay, adults, one more time. Evidently you did not pass the test, and you're just gonna have to keep taking it every year. There you go. They like to sing. I'll take that. Open up their mouths, a song comes out. Okay, kids, there's not as many of you, don't let me down. You ready? They raise their voice. Horrible and wonderful. Make a joyful noise and sing. Everybody, they like to sing. La 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 la. Open up their mouths, a song comes out. They raise their voice. La 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 la. Make a joyful noise and sing. There's a great book by Richard Russo. He's a great novelist, and it's called Straight Man. And in this book, it's about a professor at a state college in Pennsylvania, this fictional state college, and he's the head of the English department. And the president of the university, who has a wall full of books that he has never opened, decides that he wants to roll the English department into the communication department. And this is very upsetting to the head of the English department. He just thinks it's a horrible idea. His wife has a business, and she goes away to the West Coast for a couple weeks or a couple days, and he begins, in 24 hours, his life completely unravels. He finds himself in all these compromising positions, and things get worse and worse and worse. His wife's away until finally she's at a restaurant, and there's a television out, and she looks up, and she sees her husband on the national news. And he's standing in front of one of those little lakes that they make in universities, and he's holding a duck by the neck. And he says, "If the English department dies, so does the duck." So she hurries home, and his friends come around and they bring him back from the edge of his craziness. But there's this great scene I was so struck by at the end of the book, in which his friends are having a party, and he goes over to his friend's house, and he's in a small room. He's in a little like a library room with his friends, and everybody's got drinks, and they're eating and talking, and all these guys are around him, and he looks around him, and he realizes these people have brought him back to who he is. And he realizes that they knew who he was better than he did. There's a difference between who you think you are and who the people around you know you are. And that is an important difference to remember, and it's the lesson I first learned. I have a habit of learning a lesson a lot of times. My whole life is like Groundhog Day. It just keeps coming back on me time and time again, that movie, This is a lesson I first learned on my 5th grade field trip. But in order to understand what happened to me on my 5th grade field trip, I have to explain to you who I went on my 5th grade field trip with. One of my best friends growing up, I grew up on the north side of Indianapolis, was named Glenn. And Glenn was one of my best friends. I hung out with him all the time. But Glenn was the kind of person, my mom would say about Glenn, "Glenn's a nice boy, but," and that was all she would say. She wouldn't finish the sentence because she didn't want to say anything unkind about my friend Glenn. She wanted me to finish the sentence for her and know what she was saying without her having to say it. And today I know what she would have said. Today, in today's language, we would have said, "Glenn's a nice boy, but sometimes he makes bad choices." I would have said, "Glenn's a nice boy, and he makes interesting choices." He did. It was interesting the things he chose to do. And I was often present when he chose to do them. I actually don't think it was Glenn's fault. I think it was actually the place that he lived. It was the environment that he lived in. He lived in this incredible house with this incredible family. There were way too many children in the family. And the parents had lost control, particularly Glenn's mom. Glenn's dad was a doctor. He was a surgeon at Methodist Hospital in downtown Indianapolis, and he would go down there, and then he'd come back, and he would love the chaos. But his mom couldn't. I was driving around with a woman in Wisconsin. She was driving me around from school to school, and we were talking about having kids, and she said, "You know what? We had 2 kids. We were doing fine because we could do, man-to-man coverage. We got that 3rd one and went to zone, and everything just went to hell after that." Right? You just couldn't get. And that was the way it was with Glenn's family. Glenn had, at that point, the story I'm going to tell you, he had 3 younger brothers and sisters. So when we were 9, it went all the way down to 2, right? But a couple years before, Glenn's aunt and uncle had died in a car accident. And so without thinking immediately, Glenn's mother and father took those 3 older kids in, 2 girls and a boy, all older than Glenn. And suddenly it went from 4 to 7, and it was just too much. It became a liberated zone. As a matter of fact, there's something to do with gravity, the gravity of children, because that many people in the house, that many children in the house seem to draw other children in like a vortex, like a giant black hole in the neighborhood, swirling around until there's just more and more children coming in, and Glenn's mom had no idea who they were. She would lose track of her own children. She'd just run down the list, Tommy, Barry, Beth, Louise, Glenn, Jenna, whoever you are, come over here right now. In a house like that, you're just trying to keep weapons of mass destruction from being created and employed. But we loved it. We would go over there and we would just cause mayhem. I remember once, we were shooting baskets in the yard, and there were just all sorts of kids running around, and nobody knew who they belonged to. And Glenn's cousin, Tommy, had just gotten his license, and he'd gotten a job, and the first thing he did was save enough money to buy a car. But he made a mistake. Actually, the car of his dream, he bought an MG midget. Now, some of you know about the MGs, which is that they're really a lot of fun, and 75% of the time of their life, they don't work. They are always in the garage with something covering them. That's where they all are even today. And so Tommy got it, and the first thing he did was take it apart in his yard and spread it out across the yard. Now, this is like the north side of Indianapolis. It was a kind of pleasant suburbs, and they had a big, huge yard. They had almost 3/4 of an acre there, but it just kind of annoyed the neighbors. And there was never any grass growing. I was shooting baskets with Glenn. And Glenn's dad was standing outside kind of surveying his empire. And the neighbor, Mr. O'Connor, came over, and he was standing next to Glenn's dad, and he said, Bud, that's Glenn's dad's name, if you keep the kids off the lawn, you could grow some grass. And Glenn's dad looked out, and he said, yeah, well, this year I'm growing kids. Next year I'll grow grass. And I heard that, and even then, like at 9 years old, I thought, that is amazing. It is amazing. So now that summer, when I was 9 years old, Glenn and I discovered the beauty and elegance of water balloons. I don't mean we hadn't known about them, but we didn't realize how much beauty, how much potential they had. Scientists describe potential energy as all the energy that is contained within a system. And when I think of a water balloon, that seems to me like the perfect description. Because you fill it up and you tie the knot and you hold it in your hand and it starts to tremble all by itself. Even when your hand is still, it just trembles and quivers with possibilities. And finally you're holding and it's moving more and more, and then somehow it speaks. It says, "You have to throw me." I said, "No, I just want to hold you." "You have to throw me." "No, I was born to be thrown." "No." Oh, it was wonderful. We bought this little bag of water balloons and we had so much fun. Of course, we immediately went to the kitchen sink, because the kitchen sink is the laboratory of every house. And we started to wrap the edge of the balloon around and turn it on. The water was spraying. Glenn's mom came in and she said, "Not in the house, not in the house." She was always saying that. She said that about 15 times that morning already about anything that was in the house, including us. Not in the house, not in the house. So we went outside, we turned out the outside spigot, and we filled up the water balloons. We threw them at each other, we threw them at the garage, we threw them in trees, and we threw them at people, and we were getting bored, and that was when we had a great idea. Now, water balloons are a good idea, but a great idea, in my mind, is a combination of two things that are not apparently related, joining them together. This is a creative act. So that was when we got the idea about the roof. Glenn's house was this huge Victorian thing with all these nooks and crannies and gables and all this stuff. And Glenn lived in like a turret of a room, this round room that directly overlooked the front steps of the house. So if you were careful, and we were, because we were 9-year-old boys, you could lift open the window of Glenn's house, and there were 2 or 3 courses of shingles between the windowsill and the gutter. And so we climbed out there. We lined the water balloons up right there in the gutter, perched there like 2 little suburban gargoyles. And we called out Glenn's little brother, Philip! Hey, Philip! We heard the front screen door, you know, that spring. Kaboom! He comes down the steps. He's like, "Where are you guys?" Oh, it was perfect. But humans are so troublesome, because he let out this blood-curdling scream. Ah! And it exceeded the signal-to-noise ratio in the house. Here's the way I figured it at this house. Okay, so there's, you know, in sound, there's this concept of noise. There's this white noise in the back, like, just wait. Hear the blowers, right? Yeah, that's like a white noise. That's the noise, right? And then there's a signal, which is me talking, which is louder than the noise. And the signal has to be louder than the noise. Well, there was this white noise in Glenn's house. It was just like, and dogs barking, and the phone ringing and all that stuff. But sometimes there was a signal that exceeded the noise. And Glenn's mom did not pay attention to the noise. She was just, maybe she couldn't even hear it anymore. But when she heard that scream, it exceeded the noise. So she came out. She came down the steps, and there was Philip drenched and crying. And she said, "What happened?" He said, "Ah!" And she looked at us, and there we were, holding the water balloons. And she said, "You too, don't throw those at people." And she went back inside. Well, that was amazing. I mean, there was something that was said, which was don't hit people, but there was so much that was left unsaid. She didn't mention the fact that we were throwing water balloons, and she didn't mention the fact that we were on the roof. That was when we got our idea of pure genius. An idea of genius is things that, when you combine 3 things that are not apparently related, and that was when we got the idea about the goat. That house had so many animals in it. There was no way you could take a census. First of all, there were all sorts of rodents that had started out in captivity. But one by one, they had all escaped. The hamsters had escaped, the gerbils had escaped, the white mice had escaped, the guinea pigs had escaped, and they were all just skirting around the house procreating. You know, we'd be eating lunch and we'd see this hamster just kind of, we go, there's Tricky. We haven't seen her for 3 months. Who knows? And there were cats. Nobody knew how they were. And the cats, there was always a cat dragging its belly around, looking for someone to feed. All sorts of cats. And there were 3 dogs. And one of them was this 150-pound splay-footed basset hound named Hannibal that just roamed the neighborhood. It came in our back door through our garage. One day, we were eating dinner on the porch, and my mom went back in to get the butter for the corn, and Hannibal was standing on the kitchen table eating the butter. And there were rabbits. They had rabbits outside in the hutch, which were sometimes brought in and left inside by accident. And there was a pony. This is the suburbs of Indianapolis, and they had a pony. And we would ride the pony around the neighborhood, leaving little presents for everybody as we wandered through their yards. And there was this brief and shining moment that summer, a goat. I know you're not believing this, but I want to tell you, when I finished the story, I sent it to Glenn and to Philip, his younger brother, to make sure. I said, I hope I didn't make you guys look too bad. And Philip wrote back, he said, Bill, it was worse. I don't know who brought the goat home. It must have been Glenn's dad. He was just driving home one day, and he said, oh, there's a goat. I think I'll just bring it home and throw it in the mix. I saw Glenn's mother just about 3 years ago, right before she died, and I was sitting with her. And I said, Miss Gardner, do you remember the goat? And she was, she was old. She was in a wheelchair, and she just kind of raised her head. She opened her eyes, and she said, "That goat was a bad idea." The goat was terrifying. It was evil. It was a billy goat, so it was inherently mean and disturbed. And it had the look, people say he had a look in his eye. He got a look in his eyes. This goat was just born with the look in his eyes. And he only had half a brain, and that was completely focused on you. It was okay when it was in a little fence because you put your hand in there, but he started to push on your hand right away with his head. And he had this very disturbing and upsetting habit of snorting through his nose while he looked at you like, it was just like, "I'm going to kill you." And he was okay when he was in the fence, but then you would open the fence. I don't know why, but you would. You'd open the fence, and he'd look at you, and he had these very pointy, disturbing hoofs, and he would go like this, and you would take a step back, and he would take a step forward, and you'd take a step back, and you'd take a step forward, and then you'd turn, and you'd look at him, and he'd look at you, and then you'd run, and he would chase after you, and you'd scream, "Ah!" And he would chase you around the house and butt you, and it was horrible, and I hated it, but we kept doing it because we were idiots. So that's when we got the idea about the goat. One of us stayed up there on the roof with the water balloons. The other one went down out the front door, around behind a big garage, opened up the pen and said, "Here I come!" Came tearing around the front of the house, the goat hot on his heels, puffing all the time. The person standing on the roof hit the goat. Oh, this was beautiful. The goat didn't care, just shook it off and kept going. We went around and around the house, just pelting the goat shaking it off, until I was the last one up there. We'd been trading for about 25 minutes, and there were only 2 water balloons left, and Glenn was running on the backside of the house, and I was getting the next to last one ready, and it occurred to me that the goat was expecting the water balloon, but Glenn wasn't. So I really wanted to hit him because we were running out of time, so I stood up so I could get a lot of force. And he came tearing around, "Here I come!" And he runs by me with the goat on his heels. And I hit him in the head, and he says, "You traitor!" And the goat butts him in the butt, and he walks, and they just tear around the side of the house screaming. And I buckled over in laughter. When I did, I lost my balance. My sneakers slid on the asphalt shingles. My feet went up in the air, and I fell off the roof. And it's really funny what you think about when you're falling off the roof, headed to an uncertain future. I thought this really weird thing. I thought, my mom's gonna kill me. Kids say that every day of their lives. My mom's gonna kill me. Like they know their dad's gonna kill them, but it's the idea of their mother killing them is very, very upsetting. My mom's gonna kill me, and I knew how she was gonna kill me, and I knew when she was gonna kill me. I knew that if there was a chance of it, she was gonna kill me at 10 minutes until 6 o'clock every night. That was the most dangerous time. Because my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was a writer. My mom wrote for My Weekly Reader and all these other things for reading books and things like that. And she wanted to be a writer, but then she made a tactical error and had 3 sons. She would actually hide in the basement with her typewriter trying to write. And I realized years and years later that my mom had to do the housework. My dad worked in an office, he was an editor, and she didn't really like doing it. You just think they love doing it, and then you say, no, they don't. And she had to feed us, and she didn't like that either. I mean, she loved us, but that didn't mean she liked to do everything for us. And she didn't think about it. And at 6 o'clock, my dad was going to come in, and he was going to have a drink and sit there and watch the news. And he would walk in and say, "What's for dinner?" And my mother would never think about it until about 15 minutes till 6 o'clock. And at that point, she'd say, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to make for dinner?" And she would open up the refrigerator and wait for the refrigerator gods to speak to her. And she would find something, and she'd pull it out, and then she'd get the electric skillet. It seems to me that all of our meals were made on the electric skillet. right? And she would plug it in, and then she would pour Wesson oil in there, and she would sit there staring at the frying pan, wondering what she was going to do and how she was going to put this together in 15 minutes. And just at that moment, 1 or 2 or 3 of her idiot sons would come in and bother her. They would come in and ask her a question. Or they would ask her to fix something that they had broken, or they would accuse the other child of doing something, or 2 of them would come in and be squabbling, or they would have broken something, and they would say, please come here, or can I go over there, and will you please call them? We'd be all around her going, Mommy, 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 and she'd raise the electric skillet and say, I can't stand this! And we would all run outside because we loved our mother, and we did not want her to spend the rest of her natural life in prison for killing all 3 of her children. So that was the image I had in my head as I fell off the roof. This electric, I told you not to do anything stupid. Well, I was worried because there was these flagstones, but I didn't hit them. I fell to the side, and I fell in the pricker bush. This sticker bush, and it just stuck me and jabbed me and scratched my face, and I let out this huge scream that exceeded the signal-to-noise ratio. And Glenn's mom heard that. She came out, and she had found me head first in the sticker bush, and she said, "What are you doing?" That is a trick question. There is no good answer, and children know when a grown-up asks them, what are you doing? There's no good answer, and so I said what all children do. I said, I don't know. How did you get in there? I don't know. Are you hurt? I said, I don't know. And she said, let me get you out. And she's trying to pull me out of the sticker bush, and the branches were breaking. And of course, that's when my mother pulled in the driveway. She got about 2/3 of up the driveway in the car, and she saw, it was this long driveway, and she saw Glenn's mom pulling me out of the sticker bush or putting me in, probably preferring the latter. And she just shoved the car and parked. She jumped out. She came running out. She said, what happened? And I'm out. And I said, I don't know. And Glenn's mom says, I don't know. What did you do? I don't know. And she says, I don't know. And she said, are you hurt? And I thought, that is a great question. Because if she's asking me if I'm hurt, that probably means she's not going to kill me. And I'm trying to find words to say what happened when all of a sudden we hear coming around the side of the house, here I come! We all turn and look, and there's Glenn tearing around the side of the house with the goat. And Glenn turns that corner, he sees me and my mom and his mom standing there, and he immediately understands the situation and that he cannot help it at all. So he just keeps going around the house, and the goat chases him, and the last water balloon falls out of the gutter. And my mom looks at me, and she says, get in the car. So I get in the car, and Glenn's mom and my mom look at each other. They're about 10 feet away from each other, and there's so much to say that no words are spoken. She gets in the car, she shuts the door, she turns it around. I drive out the driveway, she turns onto the street, and she's driving, and I know she's just gonna lay into me. Like, I don't know what you did, but it was wrong. And her knuckles are white, and I'm waiting for her to yell at me, and she says, Glenn's a nice boy, but... All right. I keep forgetting, this is his fault. I would not have fallen off the roof if it wasn't for him. Now, that part of the story is just getting longer and longer. That's what we refer to as backstory. It's important to understand for character development. We think about that as storytellers. So, by the time Glenn and I had gotten to 5th grade, we were no longer allowed to be in the same class. I don't know why. I was in Miss Wall's class, and he was assigned to Mr. Revis's class, and there was a buffer class between us, Miss Delirio's class. In 5th grade in Indiana, we studied for civics, or I don't know what it was, social studies. We studied Indiana state history and government. We studied all the people that had been there and how it got made into a state and all those things that you study, whatever state you live in. And we studied how laws were made. I know. That silence just says about all I need to know about that. And for the field trip that year, we were going to get in a bus and drive 35 minutes down Meridian Avenue to the Indiana State House for a tour where we were going to watch laws being made. Pretty exciting, right? See, he's clapping here because you're thinking, that's boring. But that's not the deal for a kid. Because the deal for the kid is field trip. And children love field trips. They love them because it's not clear what the rules are. And there for 4 or 5 hours of the day, no rules sounds like a pretty good idea. After about that long, they begin to kind of exhibit Brownian motion, and they're just, okay, somebody control us. But there for those 5 hours, and there's other adults that come in, not just the teachers are with you, but there's these parents that come in. And there's actually an inverse relationship between the number of adults and the amount of supervision. At a certain point, the more adults you have, the less anybody watches anything. Kids love that. You'd be going to the sewage treatment plant and kids would go, they didn't care. We were just getting out of school. This is great. Teachers have a different opinion about field trips because they are worried their children, their charges are going to do something stupid. They're worried that they're going to embarrass them. They're worried that they're going to break something very valuable, or they're going to ask a question that is very embarrassing. And the thing that they're most afraid of is that by accident, they are going to leave a child behind. Leave no child behind. Right. They were terrified of it. That was the thing they were most afraid of. They didn't really care if their children, learned anything. They just didn't want to lose them. They just wanted to get through this. Now, I had forgotten about that. School just kind of passed by for me. And one day in April, I came in to class, and there was a great hubbub. There was all this stuff going on, and nobody was doing morning work. And there were extra adults in the room. And I said to one of my friends, what's going on? He said, Bill, it's a field trip today. I said, oh, right. I forgot the field trip. I love field trips. He said, yeah, we're going to the State House. He said, yeah, this is great. And there were all these extra adults. There's even an officious mom. There is an officious mom. I don't know, maybe one of you here today is the officious mom in the classroom. There's an officious mom that is assigned to each classroom. She's like the PTA mom, and she's kind of upset that this class is not as organized and well-behaved as it should be, and now she gets to come in and organize the class. So she comes in with a clipboard and she gets everybody's name down and she starts to mark where they got their lunch and where they got their milk money and all this other kind of stuff. And this is her chance to finally assert authority. And she's walking around writing people's names down. And Miss Wall, my teacher, who had been there present since the founding of the American educational system, was calling people up one by one to take their permission slips, which was news to me. She said, Bill, and I came up, and she said, can I have your permission slip? And I said, I don't have it. Well, you didn't bring it in? No. Well, didn't your mother sign one? No, I think she forgot. I wondered if you could forget things when you didn't even know you were supposed to do them. She said, you don't have one? I said, no. Well, could we call your parents? I said, I don't think so. I think they're both gone. She said, well, Bill, oh goodness, she said, what am I going to do? Everybody else has signed their permission slip. What am I going to do with you? I said,
I don't know. And just at that moment, the officious mom, she said, we can all line up at the door. Miss Wall's power was being usurped. I mean, these mothers came and went, but this was her kingdom. She said, I can handle that, thank you. Yes, children, you can line up. So everybody got lined up, and Miss Wall went to the front of the line, right there by the door. And now I didn't know what to do. I never knew what to do. It's true. You know, kids spend most of their time not knowing what they're supposed to do. And then somebody tells them to do something, and then they do it. And most of the time, we just kind of do something. That's what we're doing. So I was kind of doing something. I kind of stood in the line, thinking maybe I'm kind of going on the field trip, though I don't kind of have a permission slip. And one by one, the people of the lead, and the officious mom is marking them all off until there I am. And she looks down at me and she asks a question that is often asked of people without papers. Who are you? And I said, I don't know. And Miss Wall said, he's all right. Which is all a kid really wants to hear. Miss Wall saying, he's all right. I said, I'm all right. And she said, Miss Wall, she said, Bill, you stand out here in the hallway and we'll be right back. And then they all filed out down the hallway. And there I was, standing in the hallway, waiting for Miss Wall to come back. And finally, for a brief moment in my life, I knew what I was supposed to do. I was just supposed to stand here and wait for Miss Wall. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and she didn't come back. And I finally looked down the hallway. And there, standing in front of Mr. Revis's room, was Glenn. Now see, that has meaning, does it not? Because it's part of a story. When Glenn is there, we know there is a problem. You wouldn't have known that. I said, Glenn. He said, hey, Bill. I said, what are you doing? He said, I forgot my permission slip. I said, I forgot mine too. He said, Mr. Revis is coming back for me. I said, Miss Wall's coming back for me. He said, oh, do you have a parent? I said, no. He said, neither do I. Because everybody was assigned, like a parent, each parent had like 8 children to be responsible for. I said, do you have a buddy? He said, no, because we had to have buddies. He said, we can be buddies. So we joined right in front of Miss Delirio's class, and we waited for them to come to get us. We were buddies, and we were going to the State House without parents. This was getting very exciting. But then nobody came back, and Glenn said, maybe we better go down to the office to help them. We said, yeah. And we started. We were no longer farther than 10 steps when Miss Delirio, the buffer teacher, came running down the hall. She recognized us as some kind of 5th grader. She said, what are you boys doing? We said, we don't know. She said, I'm afraid you might miss your bus. Mr. Revis, Ms. Wall are on that first bus. I got to get my camera. Wait a minute. She ran into class. She got her camera. She said, come on, boys, hurry up. We ran down the hall. We went out the front doors of school, and there was a bus pulling away. And she said, well, you're just going to have to ride with me. Get on up. I looked at Glenn. I said, I guess we're going. He said, I guess we are. We got on the bus, and it was like our eyes had opened. We realized all these things, like you don't always have to have permission to do things. No one had told us that before. And I remember at our house that years later, I was talking with somebody in college about Glenn's house, and the word feral came to mind. I realized that we were feral. We had no adults to look at us. We were with a teacher that didn't care, and we didn't have a parent. This was incredible. And we sang songs all the way down Meridian Avenue. We sang all these songs to try to annoy the bus driver and the teachers, but Ms. Delirio joined in with us. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the burning of the school. I mean, where else could a teacher sing about the destruction of the American educational system? Well, some of them would probably like to sing about it today. I don't know. Anyway, so all the way down there, and we get up, and we pull up in front of the statue of Oliver Hazard Perry on his horse. And the other bus, the kids are running up the limestone steps, the Indiana State House. And Miss Delirio stands up. She says, boys and girls, listen to me, like giving the St. Crispin's Day speech. Listen to me. Don't do anything stupid. Do not touch anything. Do not break anything. Stay with your parents. Stay with your partners. Don't ask any dumb questions, please. Please, I want them to say that Delaware Trails Elementary School was the best school that ever visited the State House. We said, okay. She said, don't forget your lunches. I said, Glenn, did you bring a lunch? He said, no, I didn't know we were coming. We got to where she was. She said, you boys catch up with your classes. We said, okay. We ran up the steps, and standing at that door was the officious mom again. She had taken over the State House. She looked at Glenn. She said, who are you? He said, I'm with Mr. Revis's class. And here's my buddy. She said, you go ahead. We were through into the state. You see how many things have to go wrong for something to be so right? And we walked down the hallways of the State House. These huge arch was just like this high. We walked down the halls, but it was all marbled and the sound just echoing up in the distance. And we came in to the rotunda. Every State House has a rotunda. And there was our tour guide. His name was Mr. Gray. And he had gray hair. He had gray eyes and a gray suit and gray skin and a gray voice. It just wafted up into the ceiling as he spoke to us. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Welcome to the State House. I shake it over, shake it over, or too long. I shake it over, so long. I tell you this way, not so more. I shake it so long. I shake it, but my cupola was there. I shake it. It's 1856. Any questions? No! You don't know what you're talking about. Hello, follow me, follow me. And he led us down this huge hallway, this whole entourage, like Moses' army, walking Moses' people, and we were the last ones trailing behind. Very quiet. Office of the governor. We looked in to see if we could see the governor, like a sighting of a wild animal. Hello, hello. Follow me, follow me. And he leads up these huge steps onto the second floor landing. Hello. He's pointing all these huge portraits. And they all look the same. Shh, very quiet. And he points to these huge doors, these leather-studded doors that reach from floor to ceiling. His own chamber. Shh, very quiet. Watching laws being made. And we thought, cool. And he pushed open these doors, and we all filed in, and Glenn and I were the last ones, and the doors closed behind us, and we were in a balcony. Oh, kids love balconies. There's a kid up there in a balcony right now. Do you kids wish you were in a balcony? It's so much cool, so cool. And there weren't seats for us. Glenn and I were standing at the edge, but we were looking down, and there were these men wandering around lost down there on these desks from one to another, and there was a man related to Mr. Gray speaking at the front, and nobody seemed to be listening to him. He was going, I said, what are they doing? Glenn said, it reminds me of when I step on an anthill and they all just scurry around. And Glenn looks down, and I look down, and Glenn says, man, I wish I had a water balloon now. But we stand there waiting for something to happen. And there's just these people wandering, lost. Glenn says, I gotta go. Just the mere suggestion of it. I said, I do too. We looked around for Mr. Wall, Mr. Revis, Mrs. Wall, but they were over in the other aisle. And there was Miss Delirio, but she wasn't our teacher, and there was that officious mom. And we had learned early in our childhood never to ask permission from somebody who might say no. Glenn said, I think I know where it is. Let's go, we'll get back. So we slipped out the door. We were in the landing. He said, I think it's over here. It wasn't. I said, no, I think it's over here. It wasn't. Fifth grade boys are filled with answers, and none of them is right. He said, okay, let's go downstairs. Hurry. So we ran down the stairs to the first landing. We were looking around. I said, Glenn, look. We pointed. He said, what's that? I said, that's the governor in there, look. He said, how do you know? I said, that's what they look like. Except for here. But still no restroom. Still no restroom. And then we see this sign pointing down into the basement, into the bowels of the State House. How appropriate. Restrooms. We go all the way down and we see men's room, and we push open this huge door, and everything in the men's room is huge. It's amazing what kind of men people this building. Glenn says, look at this. My mother would love to have one of these in our house. We would never miss. We can't even reach the plunger. It's so high up. And we're about to go upstairs when Glenn says, look, it was a snack bar, a canteen. He says, I've got a quarter. Let's have some lunch. They're going to eat lunch. So we go and we stand in line and we're waiting. And we get up and Glenn says, I have a quarter. What can we get? And the woman said, well, boys, not. And a voice behind us said, give these boys a couple hot dogs and a couple Cokes. It was the governor. They were his hot dogs and his Cokes. We were pretty sure it was the governor. We knew right then it was a better story if it was the governor too. This is amazing. He said, you boys put some ketchup and mustard and relish on it, whatever everything you want. You come sit over here. I thought, oh man, free lunch. I love government. This is great. We sat down and he said, what are you boys doing here? And we said, we're from Delaware Trails Elementary School and we're watching laws being made. And he says, well, how the heck do you do that? And I said, well, let me explain it to you. And he said, you are very intelligent. And no one had ever said that to me before. He said, what else do you boys know about Indiana? And we told him when it was founded, how it turned into a state. And he said, this is amazing. And then he started to tell us, he said, let me tell you about your house. And I said, have you been to my house? He said, this is your house. And I said, my parents have been holding out on me. I sleep in a little room with my brother in a ranch house. They sent us down into the basement to play. He said, you can come here anytime you want. I thought, amazing. But finally I said, I think we better go. And Glenn said, okay. And he said, you come back here anytime you want, boys. We said, thanks. It was the best civic education I'd ever had. And we ran up the steps onto the second floor landing. We pushed those huge doors open and the seats were empty. Oh no, we said. We ran out the door, down the steps. We ran out the front steps of the State House and we saw the buses pulling away. And I thought, my mom is going to kill me. I could see her driving down Meridian Avenue with the iron skillet out. I am going to kill you. We ran back inside, but suddenly this place that had seemed so full of life only 3 minutes before was like The Walking Dead. People wandering around pushing hand carts of endless reams of paper, this sound drifting up, looking for someone who was alive. When he came into the rotunda, and there was Mr. Gray with another tour. Another road. And he saw us and excused himself and brought us to his office, where a phone call was made before cell phones to the school. But halfway back, oh my gosh, this story has taken so long. Okay, don't go away. Halfway back, Steve Haw, he is sitting right behind Miss Wall. And he says, Miss Wall, she says, yes, Stephen, Bill's not here. You can see her in her mind. Bill. No permission slip, right? Bill standing in the hallway. Us getting on the bus. Someone maybe like Bill wandering. But she was still hopeful. She said, I don't think he came. And Steve said, "Oh, yes, he did." She stands up and she looks back on the bus, and Mr. Revis has realized the same thing. He's looking and their eyes meet, and they know they have left children behind. Children they didn't even know they had. It seemed unfair. But there was nothing to do until they got back, and by that time the phone call had made, and Mr. Olenek, the vice principal in charge of discipline, had gotten into his rusted station wagon and driven down Meridian Avenue. And he came into Mr. Gray's office, and he looked at us sitting there, and he said, "What am I going to do with you boys?" And we said, "We don't know." And he said, "Get in the car." I'd heard that before. He led us out to his car, and we sat in the back seat, his bench seat of his station wagon. He had to take all these files, these manila files, and put them in the far back. We drove back towards the school, and I was sitting right behind Mr. Olenek, who's this huge guy, and I was looking at the folds in the back of his neck. And I looked at Glenn, and he was looking out the window, probably planning his next escapade. I started to think about what my mom had said and what I would say to her, and I realized I was going to say to her, "Mom, you're right. I'm sorry. It is him. Every time I play with him, something happens." And I finally made the connection. I saw that at every turn, every time he had suggested something, it led me down the primrose path to perdition. I said, I just can't play with him anymore. I'm gonna tell him, because I'm sick of being in trouble. And I turned to him, I said, "Hey, Glenn," but he didn't look at me. I said, "Glenn." "Glenn, hey, Glenn." He turns and looks, and he's crying. I thought he feels bad for what he's done. And I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Nothing." "What is it, Glenn?" "It's nothing. I can't say." "No, what is it? Just tell me." "My mom told me I'm not supposed to play with you." "Play with me? I'm not supposed to play with you. My mom says every time I play with you, something bad happens." "No, it's when I play with you that something bad happens. It doesn't happen with other kids. It doesn't happen with other kids. Remember when you broke the window? Remember when you gave me the rock? Remember about the paint? You handed me the brush." Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. We're arguing and yelling, and the voice in the front seat says, "Be quiet. It takes both of you. It takes both of you to do this. Now you be quiet and think about what you have done." And I did. The scales fell from my eyes, and I saw who I was. It's like I said to my children, my two idiot sons. They were throwing water balloons at cars from our driveway. I didn't know which thing to correct them on. But when the guy pulled in the driveway and he lectured and they left, I said, "I want to tell you boys something." Because they had some friends over. One boy has a brain. 2 boys each have half a brain. 3 boys together have lost their minds. And I saw who I was really clearly for the first time when we become aware of ourselves. It happens right around then, 9 or 10. I saw who I was. When I was by myself, I was a nice boy. When I was with Glenn, I was a nice boy, but. And that's the end of that. Thank you all very much. You guys have been a great audience. Thanks a lot.